Buenos días. Yo hablo solamente un poco español, pero creo que las personas aquí hablan también inglés y porque yo hablo un poco, vamos a continuar inglés, ¿vale? So welcome to everybody. My name is Marijn Beuker. I will today talk a bit about my club, AZ Alkmaar from Holland. And let's go. So for a small introduction, my name is Marijn. I work for 13 years now in my football club, AZ Alkmaar, which is a professional football club from Holland. Maybe I have to introduce a bit about my function because it's not a normal role there is in football. Normally every club, they have a technical director, they have an academy director, a scouting director, a first team coach. Very busy with today, tomorrow, maybe next season. And in our club, I'm responsible as head of performance and development and innovation for the long-term philosophy of a club, only football-wise. So that means that I ask myself the question every time, where do we want to be in 2025? What does our success look like? How does the player of the future look like? How do you create a winning team in 2025? Stuff like that. And then I work that into the program and work that into the philosophy of our club. I assume that not everybody knows AZ Alkmaar that good. We're currently the number 3 club in the competition of Holland. Tomorrow, big match, we play against Feyenoord away. So that will be good. But if you look at these facts about talent development and talent recognition, we're not the number third club in Holland, but we're maybe the number 1 club in Holland. Because, and this is the facts that we gather from CEAS, the Swiss information and data site, but 14 of our players that are in the selection of the first team, they came to our academy. 12 of the 13, that is very important, they started when they were 11 years old, so in the under 12. If you look at the list of clubs in Europe, you will see that over 50% of every game minutes made on the field were from our homegrown players. And 11.8 years when we founded them. And that is because we do a lot of investment in recognition of potential and developing them further on. So if you look at our club, we know that this is a fact, because when you look at Holland, when you look at Europe, clubs, they try to make the difference mostly with money. Their philosophy is, we buy the best players, we buy the best teams, and the chances of success is higher. AZ, my club, we understand ourselves very well, so we know that we cannot compete based on money, but we do want to compete. And we say there is only one chance for us, and that is basically thinking differently. But maybe you can also call that thinking logically, because in my philosophy, if you know what you want to achieve at the end, and what success looks like in the end, you know where you are now, and you can ask yourself some important questions as well. How does people learn? How does the brain work of children? How does the body work of children or adults? If you know that answers, you know where you are heading, all you have to do is think logically sometimes. So we say we try to distinguish ourselves by vision, more about vision. We say we don't buy success, we create it. So that means that we believe in making the difference in 4 ways. First, you have to have a clear vision about the future, what future looks like. Second is what we do, we put it in the programs of our clubs. And is that we always say there's no person in charge, there's only the vision or the program which is in charge. We don't tell people what to do, but we tell them what has to be done at the end. And we are very strict in that, in our programs. That program is founded by facts. facts, and scientific proof. I always try to look at 3 ways to gather my information. 1 is data, 2 is science, and 3 is knowledge. Knowledge that can come from experience as well. So every month I'm having lunch with Louis van Gaal, and we're trying to philosophate about football. And what works for him, that he did for 10 years, I can try to learn for that. Friday I'm sitting with Patrick Kluivert, the director of Barcelona, I think now. Also try to understand what worked for you, how can we do that into our programs. 3 questions I ask myself every day when I go to work. That are these 3 questions. So number 1, and I think everybody that has to do something with talent development or building strong teams, you have to come up with these 3 questions. 1 is, what is a true talent? I mean, what's really a talent? 2 is, if you know what a real talent is, how can you create a culture in which you can let talents develop in maximum? And 3 is, if you have individual talents, what can you do to build a winning team? At EZ, we know we don't have the money to be the best club in the world, based on the UEFA list. But we said to ourselves 10 years ago, we have to be the best club in the world, understanding the answers of these 3 questions. And I think if you look at the facts that I just showed, we are doing something good. So let's look first at that first question. What is talent? So when we talk about talent, we come up with these 5 aspects. Mostly when I ask this question towards football directors, they give me 4 answers. It's all about tactics, techniques, physics, and mental abilities of players. 2 of them, I agree, they're in my list as well. Technically and physically, you have to make sure that your players are in optimum condition. But tactics and mental, that is not in my list. Because tactics, that basically means that I as a coach tell you as my players what you have to do. And that's not football. Football is about creativity. Football is about making your own decisions. So for us, it's very important that our players understand the game. They don't know what they have to do. They have to know why they have to do that. Sometimes you go left, sometimes you go right. Sometimes you have high pressure, sometimes you hold back. That is because there's some knowledge about understanding the game. And that has something to do with the long-term memory about the brain. That's another story. Making own choices at the highest level, that's more about cognitive information. I will talk about that later on. And also in our club, we focus on the personality of our players a lot. Make sure that they understand what is necessary to be in an optimum performance state 24/7. We believe if we have 11 players like this, we create a certain football. Football that is played with lots of variation, lots of dynamics, lots of changing around the system. The positions are always occupied, but who does it doesn't matter. It's always variation with high intensity. We take the initiative as well. 11 players that I just talked about create this football. This football for us, in our belief, results in this. So in our club, we are of course busy. 225, the objectives are to become a champion, to become cup winner, and to become top 25 in Europe. So just as an introduction, that's what I'm doing every day. And that's what I look at when I look at talent. There's only one big problem in football, and most of you will know that, or most of you are doing that problem, is because people are very bad in analyzing success, predicting future potential. And why is that? Because as a person, we have one problem. We see what we want to see. So the basic about philosophy, understanding human behavior, is understanding this. We see what we want to see. As an introduction, I have a little movie which I want to show you, so please pay attention.
American songwriter Paul Simons once said, A man sees what he wants to see and disregards the rest. But that doesn't apply to you, right? Well, maybe that's just because you don't want it to. Like it or not, we as human beings tend to think that our initial opinions are correct, and when presented with the facts, we pick out the ones that suit our presumptions best. This is called confirmation bias, or the tendency to favor information that confirms one's own assumptions or preconceptions, whether they're true or not. Experts describe this behavior with a simple analogy. A Texas sharpshooter decides to go out and practice his shooting on a barn. He unloads dozens of bullets randomly and spots a few clusters of bullet holes. He then paints a bullseye over the clusters, making him seem like a really good shot. Sounds weird? It's called the Texas sharpshooter fallacy, and your brain does it all the time. Why does this matter? Take a trip back to 1960, during the Kennedy-Nixon presidential debates. People who watched the debate on television saw a disheveled Nixon contrasted with a handsome and confident Kennedy. By looking at the person, they began focusing on points where Kennedy won because they wanted him to win. Contrast this with the listeners who, for the most part, declared Nixon the winner. The next time you jump to a conclusion, ask yourself, is it true, or do I just want it to be? The answer may come as a surprise.
So, I think we'll recognize this now. Because in football we're doing this all the time. So people, they basically have an opinion on a match or on a player and then look further for confirmations to prove they're right, basically. We're doing this all the time. We call this, we have a word for this, we call this confirmation bias, we call this outcome bias, we call this preferences, we call this emotion. So football is emotion, I understand. It's very nice to have an opinion about a game, but it's difficult to have a good, spot-on understanding of what happened. So let me show you a few examples that I come up to discussing with trainers or players or parents or managers when we talk about leaving confirmation bias aside. So here are two reports. Basically, all I did is have the level of the XG, the experience goals. We played with Holland. We played a match a couple of weeks ago. We won 4-2 away. Everybody in Holland is crazy now again. We're back. We're the best country in the world. But if you look at the facts, you would see that maybe it was not so good game for us. Emotion takes over, everything is good, but is it really good? What is happening here? And the same beginning of the season, we played against, or Manchester United played against Crystal Palace. They lost. Manchester United can go crazy as well. Everything is bad again. The manager is not good. We have to replace the manager as well. But just look at the facts and see that there was a big only the experience goals were higher here. So that also says that there's something going on good. So just be patient, for example. We see the same happening in youth scouting. I don't know who of you knows the facts of biological age, that children, they are honest in growing. So the guy on the left wearing the Manchester United shirt, don't know if you recognize him, is Jesse Lingard. He's there, he's 16 years old in this picture. He looks like a boy from 12. So if you compare him with his teammates or his fellow, how do you say that? His opponents from AS Roma, he looks like a small one. He looks like he's not good. He's not successful because he is in competition on the field with guys that are stronger, physically wise. They both have the same age, but the difference, biological wise, is huge. So he looks not good, but the facts maybe say something different. And here I was in a tournament in May of La Liga, and I saw this player from Sevilla, who is 12 years old. I don't know who has a son of 12-year-old looking like this. And it doesn't say that he's not good or he is good, but we have assumptions that he will be fantastic because he is the better sprinter compared with that little guy. He is maybe the strongest player, but it doesn't mean that he has the best future, perhaps. It's happening also in senior scouting because left is the next Pele. He looks like Pele, and therefore we think that he has a phenomenal career in front of him. I don't know if you know Freddie Adu, but he was the most promising player 10 years ago. He actually played for a couple of months for AZ on the trial. We didn't take him. But he looks good, but that doesn't mean that he performs good. And on the other picture, well, it says it's a little funny, big, chubby looking guy, which is Harry Kane, actually. He looks funny. That doesn't mean that he plays funny or he is not a good player. So once again, it's happening all the time. We had a striker in AZ, Wout Weghorst. Everybody says he's a terrible guy because his behavior sometimes was a bit aggressive in the team, but that doesn't say that he's bad in playing football. He's now playing football in Wolfsburg, one of the top scorers in the Bundesliga, and playing for the national team of Holland. So once again, an example, we have assumptions and then we look for confirmations to prove we are right. And it's not only happening in football, it's also happening in the United States. For example, on the left you see Stephen Curry, one of the best basketball players of the world, and right you see Tom Brady, who looks funny when he did his NFL draft, and he turned out to be one of the amazing quarterbacks in NFL history. So there it happens the same. So in AZ we always say we don't want to discuss about whether something has happened or not, because the facts show something has happened. That gives us more time to analyze why it happened and come up with solutions. And we also use a quote that Albert Einstein always said: if you have an hour to solve a problem, spend 55 minutes analyzing the problem, the real problem, what's the essence of this fact, and then you have 5 minutes left to come up with a solution. And that's basically what we're doing all the time in my club. So, important question, how do you do that? What we do in AZ is that we substantiate everything. And that can be hard facts, but also important is to combine that with soft skills. We learned that from our club advisor, which is Billy Bean actually. We saw that happening at the Oakland Athletics in baseball. We saw that happening in the Houston Astros as well. You have to combine hard data with soft skills. You cannot measure experience or leadership or coaching or grit or desire or passion. You cannot measure that maybe in a fact, but that doesn't mean you don't have to count it, because another problem that people make is that they replace difficult questions with easy questions, then look for the answer of the easy question and think you have answered the difficult question. So what we do is, once again, we substantiate everything as a starting point of a discussion, and then we use football experts or other experts to look at it and to retrieve the essence. So that's problem solving, once again, very important. So let me show you how we do that. And we are lucky to have SoccerLAB as a partner in this, because as a football club, you know, you have lots of information coming from every aspect. You have your football data, you have your physical data, you have your cognitive data, you have your personality data. And SoccerLAB for us is the way to gather every information and put it simply for our football trainers. Because I work with the football trainers all the time, and we have to think logically about football as well. So, of course, we use this in analyzing performance and current form. I always see a problem, because if you do this, you have to talk football, you have to think football. You don't have to think data or science or mathematics. So always start with the football question and then look to the answer in science and facts and proofs. So this is just a way of how we use data, and we put it in our system. And I just want to have an objective figure about the performance of our player. So on the left, you see the 10 most important elements of playing football, which is building up, creating chances, finishing, the transition of the game, set pieces, and as one defending, there is pressure. I don't know that in indirect danger, preventing indirect danger, and preventing direct danger. All I want are the facts of a match or a form for our players to talk about whether he's good of it. The algorithms behind that are our own algorithms, of course. But this is just a way for us to look at this player. So this is a striker who is very good in the last phases of attacking. He's more as a finisher. And that doesn't mean that his fellow teammate is bad or better or worse, but his pattern is different. He's more as a player that is in the building up of the game is important, or in the putting pressure, so he's a different type of player. Well, I just wanted to show you because we are doing this, but for me this is just a beginning, and it's get interesting when we talk about this more. So predicting future potential, that's of course the holy grail in football. I don't say we have solved this, but we come close to it, I think. And once again, remember, we have 50% of all game minutes played in professional football by homegrown players. We spotted them when they were 11.8 years old. How come? Because we are using this for 10 years now. So when we look at players, we try to put emotion, preferences, bias aside. So what we do is I know a player first on paper, and then later on I met the player and I know how he looks like most of the times. So this is the starting information I want to know in my SoccerLAB dashboard when I look at him. So, for example, here you see it's in Dutch, but I will translate it. Here you see that his biological age, which says on top, biologische leeftijd, he is 0.8 years behind in his development. That means that this guy started to grow when he was 14 years old instead of was 13 years old, which is normally on average where men start to grow. So we know that this player will be later in his physical development compared to his other teammates. So he has a disadvantage, basically. If we look at his physical potential, and what we do is we compare all the physical tests with the same players in history of AZ compared on biological age. And then we see that he's the record holder on explosivity, on speed, on movement, on turning, on using his quick feet. The only problem he has, well, it's not a problem, it's logical, because if you have fast twitch percentage in your muscles, as a result, your how do you call that? Your pace of keep it. Yeah, it's basically pace. Your pace will be endurance. Yeah, endurance. Thank you. The endurance will be lower. That's logical. But this is just the facts that show us he is not quick when he's performing on Saturday in a match. But if you look at his potential, we will see that 5 years from now he will be one of the best, because at 18 everybody has the same biological age again. You understand what I'm saying, right? This is another example. This is a player. This is typically a midfield player, central midfield on the number 6 or number 8 position. He has a great endurance. He has a great speed on the long run. His explosivity is average, and also his feet are average, which is basically something he has to improve. But this is more like the genetics part of his physical elements. So we know this player will be, well, if I put it in a percentage, he will be on 80% based on physical ability. What we do, once again, this is what I just described. And look at the orange line. You will see when he was 14 years old, biological wise, and we did the tests, it showed that he's not fast in this test, which is the sprint test. But we all know from physical science that every player has when he's starting to grow, he will be slower. So look at the facts and you will see that there's nothing wrong with this player. Another part is the cognition of a player. We found out that the best players in the world, they have a better genetic brain, basically. We did science with another company. We studied 200 European Champions League players, and we looked at the speed and quality of processing information, processing cues, storing them in your working memory, and then we know if you have the potential to be a quick thinker on the highest level. So this player, as you see on top, has a great reaction speed. It has a great speed. His brain is capable of processing information on a very high level, 0.2 seconds in making a decision. The only problem he has is on the right. We call it overzicht. It means the ability, if you check around your shoulder, is your brain capable of gathering lots of cues you see, and you do that unconsciously, and then you predict what is going to happen on the field. That's how players work all the time. Players look at the hip-knee ankle combination of an opponent, and then they are predicting where he is going to stand, so I will dribble the other way around. That's why players like Ronaldo or Messi make dribble so easy sometimes, because they are just 0.4 seconds quicker than their opponent. For us, you don't see that when you look at a young boy. So we test this in hard data, and we use this in our algorithms. So this is a brilliant player. Everybody has some problems, but we look at it, how can we play with him the best? This is another player, which is, I forgot one thing to tell you. If you have your overzicht is not so good, what you should do then is not be in the center of the field. So we know when he's 18 years old, the best chance he has to perform is on the left or right side. So the guy that I'm showing is actually a left winger, which has great physical abilities in the future, and he has a great cognitive potential in the future. So another example is this guy, who has also a very high speed in processing information. He also has a very high developed working memory, so he can gather lots of information on the number 10 position, and then he uses that to make his decisions. He has two problems which is called inhibition, impulse control, and filtering. So that means that he's a player that if somebody walks up behind him, he is triggered to do something with it, because impulse control means, low impulse control means that he has not so much control about his, if you make the decision, his brain is not able to stop that decision in the movement pattern. So that is called an intuitive player. So what happens is that he wants to do something with that information, and because he's lacking filtering capacity in his brain, he's not able to make a decision, is that important or is that not important in this moment. So we know as coaches we have to help him with that, we call that camouflage, this ability to filter. So we have to help him on the field be a better decision making with more information. It's not about this, but it's interesting to look at this pattern as well. Of course, what we also take in our algorithms is information about his football history. So what we do, it's simple, but we look at how much hours a person has made when he was playing football, and we can compare this with everybody that's in our database, and we know this player, he has played more hours for AZ, he has more hours before AZ played on the street, on professional football, or on the amateur football. So his total hours are on average than everybody that has been in AZ. And we see a direct link. If you played more football on an early age, especially in the golden age or the sensitive periods, we see that directly related to the technical and intelligence of players, the technical ability and the intelligence of the game. So there's a direct link about this. We have the same when we look at the personality, because at AZ we look at the human behind the player. So this is just an example of a player who is, we use action typing for this, which is a personality test, but then related for football. So we know everything about this player, how we can coach him the best, and it says here. So this is what SoccerLAB helps us with. They build the tools for us to do our work, and we see if he's an extrovert person or an introvert person, all related to sport. But we use this in our team building sessions, in our coaching, in our one-on-one meetings, all the time. Last one is, so if I know the current performance of our players, if I know the current potential or the potential ability of our players, we can use that in the decision-making process of a game. So after a game is played, we have no discussions about was it a good game, was it a bad game. We know what kind of game it was. We know how well the players have played or how bad the players played. We know if it is an incident or not. We know everything, and we can start talking about why has this happened and what can we do to improve that. And that is, of course, what you want to do. We also use that in our, we can call it scouting department, or in our team building department, because we found also a way to predict team effectivity. And also SoccerLAB is helping us with that as well. So let me explain you this. Here you see, actually, and of course I put the names of our first team away, because otherwise there may be a scout of Feyenoord here in the audience, and that's a risk of winning the game Thursday. But here's a great example of combining hard data with soft skills. Once again, only hard data doesn't give the whole picture, and soft skills or subjective criteria don't give the best picture as well. Combine them and you have everything you need. Only make everything objective and quantify this. So what we have here is basically a combination of what we call stability, which means how long does the team play together in this lineup. We also have what we call quality, of course, so the quality of a game, which we are doing with, once again, Billy Bean in the United States. And we combine that with something we learned about the personality of a team, because there is, we did a lot of research and big data analysis about how are winning teams looking like. So we looked at hundreds of clubs who were champion, or who were number 2nd or number 3rd or number 4th, and we learned something about how do you, what's the, how do you call that? The overview of different personality styles. So as you see in the center of the field here, you see a lots of what we call the SG. You see it. There are lots of SGs in here. That means that are persons who are very responsible, who are very task-worthy. So that looks like a defender. But your personality, or actually your temperament, because personality comes from character as well as temperament. We look at the temperament things, so that has to do something with genetics as well. And if you see on top SP, that means basically you're a creative decision maker, and your brain wants to leave things open, or do you want to be very structured and have a task? Do you think tasks are very important? That says something about the position on the field. Here what we did is make a combination of stability, quality, personality, playing styles. So do you have a fit with the play style of AZ? And how about the work culture on and off the field? We did a combination of those 5 elements, and we put that in one figure. As you see on top, 5.5, that means that the selection of 16 players is all you need to become a champion. If you don't play European football, you only need 14 players. So that's a small secret I just shared with you. That's for free. But 5.5 is the prediction of the long-term success of of AZ in this season. We know that if you reach 7, it doesn't make sense why it's 7, but 7 is the number which is necessary to play for championship. So to become the number 1, you have to have a team more around the 7. We know this by analyzing lots and lots of years professional football, of course. You see, if we, on the left, you see that's the starting 11. So if we keep these 11 players fit for, let's say, 55 matches, the chance is big that we will play for first or second position. Unfortunately, that won't happen, probably. So 11 is a lot of to do with the physical abilities, but just to give a review. So what we can do now with this is that we can look, okay, what is the best team, the most effective team? Sometimes the best player, or the best player related into this quality number, isn't the person you should put on the field, because if you look at all the elements, you can come up with a more effective team. So if we look at next season, because that's what we're doing, we always are working 1 or 2 or 3 seasons ahead, especially in our club, where we have to make spot-on decisions all the time, because we don't have the money to make bad choices. So if we look at next season, and I say that these 5 players are changed, because in Dutch football you have to, there's a lot of movement, of course, happening all the time with players. So let's say that in this summer break we will lose 5 players. And let's say these are the positions that we have to change. What we do is that we have, at AZ, we always have the next players already there. So a player that comes in our team, he already plays, let's say, 2 years in that first team. So on top you will see that the stability still is good. And I learned from our friends from CEIS that if you have a stability of, let's say, 2.8, that is the average of subtop of Europe. So in Holland, on average, it's 1.7 years they play together. So there's not much stability. So when we look at this, we know, all right, next season, if we do nothing, we will play 4.7 years, or the number we have is 4.7 based on future effectivity of the team. So we can influence that, and my suggestions would be to change one of these 3 positions, because those are the one where we can have the most impact on the effectivity of the team. So just another example about how we use data, the combination of hard data, soft skills, we put them into our SoccerLAB, and that gives us the information to work with it on the field or in the decision-making processes. So, once again, I said this, we use it at a starting point of a discussion, so we have more time to look at the essence, to retrieve the essence from it, to look at why it happened and how can we cope with that. I think lots of clubs are trying to do this, try to use data, try to use predictions in it. What we do is, because we understand that this is the best chance we have of becoming champion once again or in the future, is that we put data in everything that we do, and not only in the organization, the non-football departments, but especially in the football departments as well. So, for example, rating players' potential, performance, development. We have expert meetings where this is this cream of the potential is on the screen. We combine that into our individual training programs. We use it for classification of the future teams. We use it in contract management. Which is the player that has to have a contract? 2 seasons ago, we gave a contract to a boy, which was, in the words of the experts, the non-AZ experts, he was a lousy talent. He was not good. But what actually was is that because his mother had an illness, he was very aggressive in his head, so he had strange reactions to his teammates. That doesn't say that he will not be a good talent, but in the opinion of people, they don't give him a contract because he doesn't earn it, they say. So we gave him we gave him a contract because the facts didn't lie, and he is now playing very good in our first team. You can try to find out who that is, maybe. So basically what I'm trying to saying is that what we are doing, so the information we have, the screens that SoccerLAB provided are used all the time in every element of the game. So we have that with trainer meetings, with scouting minutes, with decision making minutes. The only thing that I want to say to you, and I would share that as a take-home message, is remember, if you make decisions, are you analyzing players or games? Remember, is it true or do you want it to be true? And make sure that you leave, when you make decisions, you leave emotional preferences, you discriminate, leave that aside. Thank you for your attention. I will be here all day, so if you have a question, don't hesitate to look me up. Thank you very much. Gracias.